We're now on the top of Daf Mem Gimel Amud Beis. But Leslie the Rabbi Yossi lahavchin. Are you telling me that Rabbi Yossi rejects the entire enterprise, the entire Gzera D'Rabbanan of the Chash that requires a woman after Gerushin or after becoming an almana to wait 3 months before she gets married, because we want to be mavchin between the Baal Harish and the Baal Hasheni, and therefore Rabbi Yossi was matir nesuos, even those who were married, to remarry immediately, and he doesn't require avchana. So the first answer to the Gemara is Leslie. Enochinami. We can say that Liolam, in truth, Rabbi Yossi never required hachana of shlosha chadoshim. He never accepted, he never bought into that gzera. Ibai Semelolam Islay. Rabbi Yossi did accept that a nesua, a woman who is fully married after nesuin, has to wait 3 months for avchana. The ema, and let's interpret the words of Rabbi Yossi as quoted in the Mishnah in the following way. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Kol arusos grushos yinosu. If she was an arusa at the time that she was divorced, then she doesn't have to wait 3 months for avchana. And Rabbi Yossi doesn't accept the gzera of arusa atu nesua. But nesua, she was already married fully to her first husband. Then Rabbi Yossi would require hamtana of gimel chadashim. Since she's in nesua, she lends herself to being pregnant. She might be pregnant. She had a relationship before the gerushin, before the death of her husband, and she could be pregnant. So at least there's room for Gzera to require Gimel Chadosh of Hamtana, of Chana. So Gemara says, Yihachi, if you're going to tell me that Rabbi Yossi, in the case of a Nesua, prohibits her from getting married because Rabbi Yossi is Choshesh for Avchana, and yet he was matir for an Arusa to get married, to get remarried, we'll call it. I know Rabbi Yehuda. Now it turns out that Rabbi Yossi is just simply repeating exactly what Rabbi Yehuda said, and there doesn't seem to be any machlokes between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda, no nafkamina whatsoever. And right now the Gemara is not holding that the nafkamina is going to be legabe ibul, legabe mourning. The Gemara thinks now that to the same extent that Rabbi Yossi was matir and arusa to get married, he doesn't have the gzera of arusa atu nesua. The same din would apply that he doesn't have a gzera of erisin atu nesua, and therefore he's matir a nesua for erisin. So the Gemara says that's exactly Rabbi Yehuda, and the Gemara answers ikabenai nesua liares. The question is, a woman who's fully married, can she have eris? Rabbi Yehuda savar nesua muteris liares. Rabbi Yehuda says that there's no reason why we should prohibit erisin, since there's no intimacy and there's no havamina that she might be pregnant from a second husband, if all we're allowing during the 3-month period is erisin. Rabbi Yossi savar nesua asura liares. Once she had nesuin, she might be pregnant. We're not going to allow eris because they might come to have nesuin as well. And if she's pregnant, we have the problem of chana. But in the case of an arusa, if she was divorced after erisin, Rabbi Yossi would be matir ha linaseh. Since she's an arusa, it's not even shaykh that she's pregnant. For a woman who's not shaykh to be pregnant, lo gazer Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi is not going to say, well, let's make Gzera atu nesu if she's not even in the parish of Ibur, of being muberes. So once the gavra, the woman, is excluded from the possibility of requiring avchana because she couldn't have gotten pregnant, she's only an arusa, then the only problem is perhaps avelus. We'll see if there's a problem of avelus or not. Now, if I understand correctly, in a case of an arusa where Rabbi Yossi was matali nase, there were no ifs, ands, or buts here. He didn't require waiting even a month for avelus, because in the case of an arusa, there is no chiyuv avelus. She doesn't have to be misabelas al baila if they never brought the marriage, upgraded the marriage to its full nisua state. So the Gemara says, "V'savar Rabbi Yossi nisua asura liores." I'm going to prove to you from a brisa that Rabbi Yossi was matir erison, even in the case of a nisua, meaning she got to get from the suin. She could possibly be pregnant, but erison would be matir. Not like you said that nisua asura liores. Yossi omer kol hanoshim. Now, kol hanoshim implies both arusos and nisuos. Yisarsu, he's allowing erison without any reservations, unqualified, in an absolute way. Again, except for the case of chutz min almana, if she lost her husband, then erison is going to be prohibited according to Rabbi Yossi mipnei evil, become evil shloshim yom. Now that itself is a problem, which the Gemara is going to pick up here on Daf Mem Gimel Amid Beis, and that is, why does an almana who is obligated in ibul, in avelus for a lost husband, why is she also in erison? Erison is not a ma'aseh simcha. So that we'll get back to later on. And then the brisa concludes, lo yinosu, v'kula lo yinosu, ad sheyulem shlosha chadash. In any event, it's explicit here that as far as erison is concerned, Rabbi Yossi has an unqualified heter that applies not only to a grusha min erison, but even to a grusha min hanesuin. It's not like you said that Rabbi Yossi holds that nesua asur liaris. Erison is always mutter. So now we're back to our original kasha. Then what's the nafkamina between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda? If Rabbi Yossi is even matir on a sua for erison, I mean, that was the whole point of Rabbi Yehuda, that erison is not a problem. So Gemara says, "Hi, my kush. What exactly are you asking here in this price? Maybe your diak in the price is not accurate. It's not correct. Are you being medayik from the ratio of this price or the sefer? If you're asking from the ratio, the ketani, Rabbi Yossi omer kol hanoshim yisarsu, and therefore you assume that Rabbi Yossi is matir in a suah for erison, because kol hanoshim implies even in a suah. So I don't understand your kasha. Wait a second. We had a similar language in the Mishnah itself. Yokim barusas grushos yinosu. And even though the Mishnah used the term kol hanoshim yisarsu, we interpreted the Mishnah that it refers to kol harusos, which were divorced from their husbands, yisarsu. So hachinami here in the brisa too. Let's be consistent. And hachinami kol harusos grushos yinosu. The brisa is also referring to arusos. Emphasize that word arusos. So even though it says kol hanoshim, it means kol hanoshim arusos yinosu. Ella, it's obvious that therefore your kasha is from the sefer, and that's going to prove that Rabbi Yossi was matir nesua l'saris. Tikatani v'kulan, all the married women. Lo yinosu ad shiu lahem shlosha chadashim. And it says lo yinosu. Let's underline the word lo yinosu. In suvehu below, Rabbi Yossi dafka prohibits nisuin. Ha'it itaruse, but erison chaper domi was matir. Now, the sefer has to be talking about a nesua. Why? Because we interpret the Reisha in Arusos, and Rabbi Yossi was Mate Arusos Linose. So what's the Easter in the Sefer where he requires Shlosha Chadoshim? It must be referring to Nesuos, because Arusos are Mutter. And yet, the Nesuos Asura, Mishum Avchana, Linose, emphasize that word Lo Yinasu, implying that Mutaris Liaris, that Erison is Mutter. So we see clearly that even in the case of a Nesua, Erison is Mutter, not the way you said it, that Rabbi Yossi has the Easter and the requirement of Hamtana in the case of a Nesua. Amar Rava, no. The Sefer is referring to a Nesua. You're telling me that you prove from the Sefer that Rabbi Yossi is Matu Nesua Liares. Tritz, you should be Mataritz the Bryce. Here's the way you interpret the Bryce. Rabbi Yossi Omer Kol Arusos, Rushos, Yinos. Like we said in the interpretation of our Mishnah. So we're talking about Arusos. And with regard to Narusa, Rabbi Yossi never had Xer. And maybe if we allow an Arusa, we'll come to allow an Asura. No. Chutz min almona. Shloshim yom. Unesuos lo yisarsu. However, if she was an Asua, and she was divorced from the Suin, or widowed from the Suin, is lo yisarsu. Why? Because Rabbi Yossi has a Xera on an Asua who might be pregnant, and he prohibits them even Erison because they might come to Nesuin. So it's a Xera of Erison or to Nesuin. So we see clearly the nafkamina between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi holds that Erison might be usher, as it is, in fact, in the case of Nesua. Gemara asks, now we get back to the problem of an almana that she has to wait a month because of evil, even though she was only an almana min Eris. That doesn't make sense. An arusa has no chiv avelos for the loss of a husband. Tani Reb Chia bar Ami, each to arusa, if she dies, and then we'll see in a second if he dies. Lo onein, lo mitamila. He's not in a state of aninus. He's not prohibited and joined from eating kodshim. And if he's a Kohen, lo mitamila, he's not allowed to bury her, become tome, contract tuma. He, now we switch it around. He has an arusa that lost her husband, lo nenes. She's not in a state of aninus over the loss of her husband. She's not joined from eating kodshim, lo mitamila. And he is not going to bury her if he's a Kohen. Mesa. If his Arusa died in a Yosha, Mesu, Gova Ksubasa. Okay, that has to do with the case of where they wrote the Ksuba Benaris. But in any event, we see clearly that there's no obligation in the case of an Arusa of Avelus al-Baila. So the Gemara says, Lamaskana Ella Tanoihi. We're going to reject the original answer. We're going to interpret that Girsa is correct, as we have it in our Mishnah, that Kol Anoshim Yisarsu. And Rabbi Yossi comes to teach me, where's the Chiddush Rabbi Yossi, that during Yemei Avelus, there's an Iser Erison. Namely, that Erison is upgraded and defined as a Maisa Simcha, which is antithetical to Avelus. But now we had the question, the Kalachomer of Chizda, from the Brisa, because the Brisa said that there are certain chumras in Tvur Shechal Tishba, but before that time, when we get to Rosh Chodesh Av, then Mutar Liaretz. And if there's a heter erison during the period of 9 days, as we call it, kolshkein, there should be a heter for Erisin during Avelis. The Gemara is not sensitive now at this point to the Chiddush, the bomb of Rav Ashi to Mechalik between Avelis Yishon and Avelis Chadash. So now we're going to say the following: Elatanoi, that brisa does not reflect a unanimous opinion, and we find another brisa that holds that during Avelis, Erisin itself is out; it's prohibited; it's considered a Ma'aser Simcha, and that's in fact the sheet of Rabbi Yosef. Sanya, and they wrote Chodesh V'Yad Tainis during the 9 days of Memat and Yiskem Elisa V'Elish. They should cut down their masumat, and me live nos binyan shel simcha, and me live toa nitiyah shel simcha, umili aretz. But again, all this is a minhag chumah they accepted upon themselves. Umilisa. Shabbos shechal bo tisha b'tocha. Now we get to the more intense avelus of Shabbos shechal, of Shavua shechal bo. Asur l'saper ulekabes. The Yesh Omrim Kol HaChodesh Os, that the Isur Tisporis and Kibbutz applies from Rosh Chodesh. But in any event, this Tana holds that there's an Isur Erisin during Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av. And that's what it says here. Shabbos Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av. Also, l'saper u'lechabes, and maybe we have the gears of also liares. Here it's in parentheses. And we understand now that Erisin is a Ma'aser Simcha. And that's exactly where Yossi holds. Therefore, he prohibits Erisin during Avelis. Maskiv lo Ravashi mimai. How does the Gemara know that liares, when the Brisa says it's also liares mamish, meaning even without a suda, dilmu levid sudas erisin udios. Well, liares shaper dom erisin per se is not a Ma'aser Simcha. You can convert it into a Ma'aser Simcha by integrating it into a seuda, a suda yesh ba simcha. But in and of itself, if you isolate Erisin without a suda, it's not a Ma'aser Simcha, and it's not also during Avelis. So once again, we get back to the Kash of Chizda as to the Kal Vachomer from the Brisa. So where rejects it, where it says Ihachi, if you're saying that the Isur of Erisin applies if and only if there's a suda accompanying the Erisin, then how are you going to understand Milisa? The Brisa says that there's a prohibition of both Erisin and Nesuin. Linase Nami, you're going to have to interpret. You're boxed in. You have Erisin and Nesuin in one breath in the Brisa. It must be talking about the same situation, and that is Lema Evid Sudas Nesuin Udiasa Halisa Shaper. That's impossible. We know that Nesuin itself is also doing Avelis even without a Suda. Meaning that Nesuin, as opposed to Erisin, is a Ma'aser Simcha essentially in and of itself. So Ravashi rejects this. Let's differentiate between Erisin and Nesuin. Bishlem and Nesuin below Suda Ika Simcha. Yeah, Nesuin is inherently, by definition, in and of itself, a Ma'aser Simcha. It's antithetical to Avelis. Ela Erisin, what's Erisin? It's like Ma'aser Kinyan. It's not antithetical to Avelis. It can be embellished and upgraded to the state of Simcha, but not without a Suda. Without a Suda B'ika Simcha. Ela Ravashi, let's answer Rav Chiz's Kasha. Kuli Alma, according to everyone, you're allowed to be Ma'aris during Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av, and possibly even on Tisha B'Av itself. But nevertheless, Rabbi Yossi prohibits Erisin Kol Shloshim Yom Shal Avelus. Why? You'll ask me the Kal Vachomer. And the answer is that in Tisha B'Av we're going to have a kula. Why? The Shani Avelis Chadashim Avelis Yishana. In other words, Avelis Yishana on the Churban Abayis is kal, relatively. And it's also Avelis the Rabbin, which is Kal, relatively. Whereas if you're talking about the loss of one's husband, that's a more serious, severe Avelis because it's an Avelis Chadasha. And not only that, it's Avelis the Yachid. It's very private and personal, catastrophic Avelis. And therefore, since the Avelis is Shal Yachid and it's Avelis Chadasha, it's Chamura, and therefore Yossi was Machmir to prohibit Erisim to the 30 days of Avelis, even though he would concede that Mutal Yaris B'Shavua Shechal Bo Tishba. Because even though he's Machmir and Erisim for Shloshim Yom of Avelis, that's because it's Avelis Chadasha and the Yachid. But in the case of Shavua Shechal Bo Tishba, which is Avelis Yeshana and Avelis Derabim, he's Mekil, and he allows Eris. And this leads us to the Mishnah on the bottom of Mem Gimel Amid Beis. Arba Achim Nesuim Arba Noshim Umesu. So now 4 brothers died, and their 4 wives respectively fall for Yibum to the other brothers. Imrota Gadol Shebehem Liyabim is Kulon Harchus Biyada. The Gadol could be Miyabim all 4 of these wives because they all fell from different bat. Misha Yanasu Lishtei Nochim Ubeis. And now his 2 wives fall for Yibum. Be also Chalitza Shal Achas Men Poteres Saras. One of the Achim decides to be Miyabim or to be Chalitz, one of these 2 wives, that patters up the other wife from Yibum and Chalitza. And the Gemara is going to derive this from a pasuk. And let's finish the Mishnah Be'ezer Hashem on Daf Mem Daled Omen Aleph. Oisa achas kshera v'achas psula. One of the wives is kshera lakuna, the other is psula lakuna. For example, she had a gerushin from a previous marriage, and a grush is asura lakoin. Then we would advise and recommend that in choosing one of these 2 ladies for chalitza psula, he should dafka choose that Yevamot who's excluded from Kudish at a previous marriage with a gerushin, because chalitza passes a woman lakuna. She's already psula lakuna. I'm talking about the grusha. So why give chalitza to that woman who's kshera lakuna and pasal l'ksub? It's totally unnecessary. And this is called al yishpach odom meiboro ve'acherim tzrichem lo. Don't ruin the waters if others can benefit from it, because they need the waters. However, if he's going to do yibum, then miyabim likshera. There's no need for him to choose the psula. He has an equal choice decision. Let him choice. He can decide between the psula and the. And this leads us here to the Gemara on Daf Mem Daled Amid Al. Thank you very much, and Moadim.